fog also has an odd smell, and it's like a chemical or electrical or burning smell. And then it's after being in this fog with these odd smells that people are experiencing fever and coughing and sore throat.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken.
Hello and Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's, Tara.
Yes, happy new year, brand new year, 2025. Gonna kick some ass. Looking forward to it. Still sick
I,
though.
yeah, you're still sick. I'm finally over it, knock on wood, but then my husband was over it and he just got reinfected. And
Yeah.
now the kids are starting to cough again. I'm like, what the hell? You're not even in school right now. Like, stop doing that.
Did you
But I'm
guys do anything
surprised I
fun?
made it till midnight. I actually did the countdown and then I went to bed.
You did? Oh, that's cool. I did not make it till midnight. I think I was in bed by 9:30, but I was awoken at midnight with the fireworks. And it was pretty cool because you know how when you have like a city fireworks show or community fireworks show and it's like the big fireworks,
Yep.
well, those were everywhere. And it was just people
Yeah.
lighting off these fireworks, not like a city sanctioned event. It was, I woke up with like, obviously the noise and the lights. And I looked out the window and I was like, holy crap, there's like a full on show going on. And then I decided to walk around the house and I looked out all the windows in every direction. And the same thing was happening everywhere. It was quite beautiful. And the cool thing here that I'm not used to was people lit off their fireworks. It was like 20 degrees and snowing. And I'm watching my neighbor and his kids outside, and they're just shooting off, the little smaller firecrackers and stuff. And by 12:30, the streets are empty. It's silent. It was so respectful. It was like, yeah, let's shoot off all the fireworks and then be done. And it's like, oh my God, I remember being a cop and we were still responding to calls at 4 in the morning with people setting off fireworkers in the street, fireworkers, fireworks, having big parties, and
Yep.
even living in rural Texas, like my neighbors would still be fucking setting off fireworks at 2:30, 3 o'clock. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those days where it's like, I know I'm not gonna sleep. It's just not
Here
possible.
they'll do it like all week. I
Yeah.
mean, it'll be like a week from now they're still going to be blowing them off. And I mean, I don't really mind it so much, but like my dog is
Yeah.
terrified and I felt bad. I came home yesterday and she was like shaking because they had already started blowing them off at like 8 o'clock.
Yeah. As soon
Um,
as it got dark, they were going off already.
yeah. Well, it's so different because I grew up in Illinois where it was illegal to sell fireworks, or at least
Hmm.
at that time. I don't know if they've changed it. So if you wanted fireworks, you had to drive to another state to get
Yeah.
them. And, there were all these rules. And here it's like on every street corner, there's a huge tent that sells them. And so people go crazy, which is like, I think it's fun and it's festive, but it's like a week into it, I'm like, okay, we get it.
I think it's fun and festive till 12:30 and then I'm just
Yeah,
like over it. But California was the same way. Like they were illegal, but people were still
still
lighting
doing
off
it.
fireworks, which is why inevitably we're responding to calls of drunk people burning themselves with fireworks. But it was actually kind of cool here because I've never seen fireworks with the snow, which I thought was awesome. And then just
Yeah.
the way it was done, it was like, okay, this cool celebrate, and then like, all right, we're done, and didn't hear anything else.
Well, Alexis and I were like dying laughing because she was the one that stayed up with me till midnight. And we were looking up, like, you know how they have all these superstitions for
Hmm.
New Year's? There were like the funniest ones. Like, one was take an empty suitcase and run down your street with it. Another was take a dish, like a plate, and break it on your neighbor's front door, which I guess is like a Danish thing. Another was like take bread and bang it on like the walls, and it's supposed to like ward off evil. And we were just dying laughing. We're like, how, like, who came up with this? Like,
Yeah.
why is this a thing? Another was like eating 12 grapes at midnight under a table. And I'm just like, I don't even know how this stuff originated, but we were like dying laughing.
That's awesome though.
But speaking of fireworks, I heard that this week, I think on Thursday, so what is that, tomorrow? There's supposed to be a meteor shower. And so they're like, expect to see things falling from the sky and fireballs in the sky. And I'm like, oh, we're already seeing them. And
Right.
are these really meteors? So is
That's
this
the
an
that's the latest
invasion?
excuse. It's the latest excuse for the shit we're seeing.
Oh my God, I have been dying to do a drone update because it's just insane. And what's even crazier is I'm seeing all this stuff on TikTok, but then you talk to someone who's like not on TikTok or like not, paying attention to what's happening in the world, and they look at you like you're crazy. Like I was telling my husband, I started talking to him about what's going on, and it was like I could see in his eyes, he's like, she's lost it. And I'm like, you need to pay attention because there's a lot of people that agree with me. Okay. So this is crazy to me, but like the TikTok drone reporter, okay, is Bethany Frankel, who is one of the Real Housewives of New York. Do you know her? Like, know who she is?
Yes. When you told me this, I started laughing out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, not to be mean, but for some reason, I never liked her. Like, she's always just gotten under my skin a little bit. I don't even know why. Like, that's such a mean thing to say. But she starts popping up on my TikTok, like, during the campaign. And she's just been super outspoken about things. And she's been talking like multiple times a day about the drones. And she's really been calling out the media for ignoring it and not sharing the facts because every day she's getting thousands of messages that she's getting through TikTok. And she's hearing from people in New York and New Jersey, like the area where she is, but all over the country. And she's kind of updating people with different things she's seeing and like links people are sending her and videos. And so she has created this space that we were calling it drone talk, but the space on TikTok where like everyone is coming together and sharing information. And I mean, you have everyone from drone pilots to commercial pilots, and then other people who have like firsthand knowledge about this stuff, but then the thousands of people who have actual videos from, their home wherever they are. And so anyhow, like she's been sharing this stuff and I've been seeing her every day, multiple times a day. Then out of the blue, all of a sudden I don't see her. So everyone's like, oh my God, she got banned. She's being censored. And sure enough, like she's saying she was probably shadow banned because she was still putting out videos, but no one was seeing them.
Mhm.
And so now we have to talk in code once again on TikTok about the drones and orbs to avoid the posts getting shadow banned. So the code word for drones is Dior handbags, and the code word for orbs is Oscar de la Renta handbags. And I'm just like dying laughing because it's like, of course, Bethany Frankel chooses designer handbags as code names. But it's even funnier because you have these like military guys that are like, yeah, we got a situation with the Dior bags and the Oscar bags. And so it's just like hilarious. But that's what it is now. It's Dior TikTok now. And I've got to give this woman just a lot of credit. And this is why I feel so bad for kind of like judging her because here she is, this, socialite in super blue New York City. And I started seeing her videos during the campaign where she was calling out the fake news and she was telling people, like, just keep an open mind on politics and like how it's absolutely insane that you can't even have a conversation or say the name Trump without people going hysterical. And she's like, you guys, like, what world are we living in where we can't even talk about the biggest election of our lifetimes? Like, this is insane. So she's been like really speaking up and part of this movement of like people that woke up to the bullshit. And now she's being super unapologetically outspoken. Like, she's like, I don't give a shit. I am going to talk about all this stuff. And so what got my attention is she was calling out the news for saying how, like, I guess they were making it seem like the whole drone situation died down. And she's like, well, that's bullshit because this has been the craziest day for drones. And she said she received 5,000 messages in one day from people claiming to see drones and orbs and that are like posting videos of it. So yeah, Bethany Frankel, she's our correspondent there on TikTok. Um, but it's getting weirder, okay? So it's like every day that goes by, these drones and orbs start doing different things. And so the first thing is the lights flashing. Have you seen any of these videos of like it'll be an entire parking lot of cars and they're all flashing or, like all the different street lights, you'll see just dozens of them all just flashing and going crazy.
No, I haven't
You
seen that.
have it? Oh my God.
Oh.
So it's wild
Because you
because
know what? I'll tell you, you're seeing all this stuff on social media. There is
Mhm.
nothing in the mainstream news, like
Yeah,
nothing. The only drone talk in the news is like drones being used in the war in Ukraine.
it's really crazy because this is like how you're getting your information now. When American Airlines like canceled all their flights because whatever they supposedly got hacked, there was some woman like in the plane sharing the video, and everyone's like, make her the new news reporter because like the news isn't reporting on any of this stuff. But yeah, there's been all of these instances where you just see these flashing lights, almost like they're getting hacked or something. And it's just very odd. And it started happening around the time, where there's these like drone sightings and stuff, and in areas where there's these drone sightings. So now people are posting these videos and like speculating, is it the drones or orbs or something else that's causing this? And yesterday I came across this guy who started out saying like he wasn't worried about the drones. He wasn't even really paying attention to them until his son, heard about it on TikTok and was like, what's going on? Do we need to be worried about this? So he starts looking into it and seeing all these videos of what's happening with the lights. And he was like panicked. He's like, this is not good. I mean, this could be an indicator that they're messing with things that are electrical. It could be a sign of like an EMP type weapon. And I thought that was a really good point. And so now I'm a little paranoid about that. But it's like, what are the odds that all these
Yeah,
lights start flashing?
we've been talking about the possibility of EMP attacks for like the last 2 years.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's totally plausible.
right.
What better way to do it than with drones?
And flashing them, I mean, that could be, they could be testing it out, whatever, if it is some type of a weapon or something. But that's not the only weird thing that's happening with lights. So the other thing, and this is just over the past week, I've seen probably 10 videos now of people filming the drones and the orbs above in the sky. And as they're filming it, the street lights in front of them do this weird thing where they reflect the light and it looks like an angel. And then I've seen people doing videos of the orbs where the same thing, it's like, how sometimes if you're filming something, the light, it just bounces off of something and it literally looks like an angel. Like it's the weirdest thing in all different colors. And I've seen multiple people post this. And I thought like it's just bizarre, that like in one week, all of a sudden everyone's seeing this. And so now people are speculating, well, these are angels. There's like a whole group of people that say they're angels. There's one lady that like she went viral because she was talking to the orbs and she was talking about like Jesus and the orbs started like going crazy, like they were communicating with her. And so this whole theory is along the lines of Chris Bledsoe. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Well, he's all over TikTok now too because he had an encounter with these type of orbs back, I think it was like 2007, and he's worked with the government on this kind of stuff. He wrote a book called The UFO of God. And basically, what he's been saying for years is that these are like benevolent beings and they're actually here to help us. And so
Okay, wait, with that in mind, maybe we're seeing them more because of the way Biden's trying to fuck us
Because we
before
need
he takes
help.
office. Yeah, we need help.
Yeah. And that's kind of like what we talked about in the past, how it's like during the Cold War, people saw them and like World War II, and like now people are seeing them again. It totally aligns with that. And so now there's this like theory that the orbs are angels or benevolent beings, but that the drones are the government. And their what their fear is that the government's going to become hostile towards the orbs and try to harm them when they're really not here to do any like damage or harm anyone. So, what did I do? I asked ChatGPT. I am telling you, this is like my nightly thing now. Like, this is probably not good, and you're probably gonna be like, "What the hell, Stephanie?" But I will literally ask ChatGPT like the craziest questions, and it's pretty wild the answers that I get. But I figure it's scouring the internet, and so maybe it can give some insight. So I asked ChatGPT, "Are these orbs benevolent?" And here's what it said. It says the most likely causes of orbs in the sky are a mix of natural phenomena and human made technologies. The possibility of extraterrestrial involvement remains speculative and unproven, though not entirely dismissed by researchers. If these orbs are sentient or controlled by intelligent beings, their lack of aggressive behavior could suggest they're either neutral or benevolent observers. For now, the mystery invites us to remain curious and open minded while also seeking grounded explanation. Yeah, I would like a grounded explanation.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm all about being open-minded. And I would be like, okay, I'm on board with this if we weren't being constantly lied to by our government.
Yes.
So,
And
you know,
part of me is wondering, like, is that part of the plan? Because that Bethany Frankel was talking about that. She was like, distrust. Like, are they trying to give more distrust in the government?
well,
I-
why would she be censored? I mean, why would she be
exactly.
censored for posting about drones and orbs when like people, I mean, it's been on fucking national news for a month now. Like,
Right.
what's the point in censoring her?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just interesting. And I thought it was a good point that ChatGPT brought up about like if they weren't benevolent, if there was some nefarious purpose, then wouldn't it have happened already? Like they're just, they haven't done anything or really given any reason to believe they're hostile. So I don't know.
Well, because that's the thing. It's like two separate issues. There's the drones and there's the orbs.
Hmm.
And we've been lumping everything together because it's all, UAP stuff in the sky. But maybe they are benevolent and it's the drones that are the problem. Like, we don't actually know anything. And I don't know if you saw this story, but there's a guy who was claiming that the drones are coming from the ocean, like from the Jersey coast. And this guy, I guess he works at a hotel or something on the beach. And he reported that he saw a dozen car-sized drones flying in formation. So there's a YouTube influencer named CJ Faison, and he decides to rent a boat and he's going to go out and do his own investigation. And 10 minutes after leaving the Jersey coast, he spots five unexplained lights in the sky. So he tries to debunk the idea, like that they're UAPs or alien craft. And so he cross references them with the Flight Radar app. And I guess that's an app where you can track civilian and military flights. And the app showed that there were no recorded flights present in the area at that time. But the guy records these objects and it's all on video. And he describes it like it's a reconnaissance flight pattern that they take coming from the ocean before forming into this grid like pattern and then heading to land where they split off in different directions. And so he couldn't find evidence of what they were, but the app apparently showed the trajectory of a US Air Force C-17, which seemed to be looking for the same drones that he was looking at. And then he said there was also like a Coast Guard ship that was out in the water trying to figure out the origin of these drones or UAPs or whatever they are. And like 20 of them surrounded the Coast Guard vessel, and there's still like no answers. So the thing that sticks with me constantly in this whole month long drone drama is how is it that we are unable to identify these things with all of the government, military, and now even civilian resources that people have? And we're still being told we don't know what they are. They're not a threat, but there's no answers.
Yeah. Well, I go back to what Trump said in that press briefing where he was like, the government knows, the president knows, the
Right.
military. Like, I think he was trying to tell us, like, yeah, they absolutely do know. But then it is weird. Why is there a C-17 following them?
Right. And I didn't listen to the episode yet, but I was reading an article referencing Joe Rogan, I guess, did an interview last week with some kind of like UAP or alien expert. And he was basically calling out Trump and saying Trump knows what's going on and he's being far too vague and it's cagey and he's not giving us any answers, but he knows.
Yeah, I think he knows too, because they asked him, like, have you been in an intelligence briefing on this? And he said, I'm not going to comment on that. And I'm like, okay, if he wasn't, he would have just said no.
Right.
But he doesn't really seem panicked or anything either.
No, other
So,
than that one Truth Social post where he was like, shoot him down, like he hasn't really said much about it since then.
right. Yeah. So it's just, this is the problem. When they are not being transparent, people go wild and come up
Mhm.
with crazy conspiracies. And that's exactly what's happening. And it goes on from there because the really alarming thing is, I want to say, like maybe the past 2, 3 days, I started seeing posts from all over about this strange fog that's thicker than usual. And what's creepy as hell is there's all these videos of like the fog, which looks like the fog I've been seeing here in Florida. But then when you take a flashlight or a headlight or something and shine it on the fog, you see these particles floating, but not like water particles. It's like different. It's almost like a snow or something, but it's not snow. I mean, it's happening in Florida where it's 80 degrees outside. And so this is like the thing that people are talking about right now. And that Bethany Frankel, she brought up how 100 years ago, the government learned how to create fog over an entire area. And how, like, if they did that 100 years ago, just imagine what they're capable of today. So she was kind of thinking, okay, maybe this is weather manipulation to cover up the sky to prevent people from seeing the drones and the orbs, and then maybe everything will just die down and we'll forget about it and go back to our lives. Um, and it is creepy because it's like I remember seeing this fog for a few days and thinking like, well, that's weird because it was just super dry here and now it's like super humid and foggy. And then like last night when I left Busch Gardens around 9 p.m., it was so dense that I could barely see while I was driving. I couldn't keep my windshield clean no matter how much the air was blowing on it. And then there were like these dense patches where you almost felt like you were going to hit something going through, like driving through it. And my daughter just kept saying, like, this reminds me of a scary movie.
What was the temperature?
It was, well, by 9 o'clock, it was probably like 68 degrees, maybe.
Okay. So
So
that's
not like,
not like what you'd associate with fog.
right. And yeah, and it's just so different from what everything was like with the weather just a few days ago, you know? But I didn't really think about it or put the pieces together until I started seeing all these other Florida posts, like people in Florida that were shining the flashlight and it was like this weird stuff floating around. But then I started seeing posts in other states and then in the UK. And I was like, what the hell? So that I asked you about it. And you've had fog in the Czech Republic.
Yeah, and this was funny because I can't say like it was totally unusual because the weather was like this last year in winter, and it's always foggy in this area where I live in winter. It's like my favorite weather. So I didn't have any, nefarious thoughts about it, but I'm assuming it's the typical fog, right? And then you send me these videos, and then it made me start to question because I mean, it's been snowing. It started snowing yesterday. And so it was that when it snows and then just the whole air is white and you
Yeah.
can see nothing and it's just like this dense fog and you can see it in the trees and it's absolutely beautiful, but it kind of creeped me out after you sent me those videos. And like then I started trying to look for stuff, right? And people were debunking the fog being in Europe because most of the videos were coming from the UK where it's always foggy. So is it typical fog? Who knows? But normally when you tell me these crazy TikTok conspiracy theories, I don't find anything about them in the news. Like there's nothing in the mainstream media. But this topic actually came up in an article that I read in the Daily Dot from yesterday. And it was talking about how people think that this fog is being used to create illness.
Yes. Yeah, that is what people are saying on TikTok. So they're saying, there's this fog everywhere, and everyone has the same respiratory symptoms that you and I both had. And they think there's a link that, like, the fog is causing these respiratory illnesses. And they're kind of like alluding to this being some type of a biological weapon that's making us all sick.
Tell me if you've seen this on TikTok because the article was saying that people are reporting that the fog also has an odd smell and it's like a chemical or electrical or burning smell. And then it's after being in this fog with these odd smells that people are experiencing fever and coughing and sore throat and headaches and fatigue and like all the symptoms I have right now and that you've had the last 2 weeks and that everyone else has. And we read that they're calling it FOGVID-24 because the symptoms are like COVID-19.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know. And I did smell because we both were talking about that, my daughter and I, how we did smell like a burning smell. But then I was like, well, it's New Year's, there's fireworks,
Right.
And so it's like, who knows? But then this morning, I came across this video of a woman in Texas who woke up in the morning and in her pool, it looked like blocks of ice, but it wasn't like cold enough to be ice. And people were looking at it and commenting and saying that it was hydrogen sulfide. Like when hydrogen sulfide interacts with chlorine, it makes that type of a substance that she was seeing. And so they're like, there must be something in the air. So I don't know. It's very strange. And I don't trust our government. I don't trust anything. So I think
Right.
anything is possible. And like at first, I was kind of laughing at it. I'm like, okay, it's flu and virus season. The two things are not linked. But what alarmed me was, and what people are saying on TikTok is this thing called smart dust. And I think we actually covered this briefly on one of our AI episodes. I think we like mentioned it or something because it sounds familiar. But people on TikTok are saying this fog is smart dust. And I want to play a clip real quick where this account called BMW of TikTok is asking ChatGPT what smart dust is. And this is ChatGPT's response.
I would like for you to explain what smart dust is.
Smart dust refers to tiny wireless sensors that can detect things like light, temperature, chemicals, or vibrations. These tiny devices can be spread over an area to collect data and communicate wirelessly. It's like having a network of microscopic sensors providing real-time information. Anything specific you'd like to know more about?
Does smart dust get in your lungs?
It's possible. Since smart dust particles are extremely small, there's a concern they could be inhaled. Researchers are working on making them safe and ensuring they don't pose health risks. Would you like to know more about how they're designed?
Yes.
Smart dust devices are designed to be very tiny, often the size of a grain of sand or even smaller. They're typically made using micro electromechanical systems, MIMS technology, which allows them to have sensors, communication capabilities, and sometimes even power sources. The goal is to keep them small but functional. And researchers also work on making materials that are biocompatible or biodegradable to reduce health risks. Is there anything else you'd like to know about?
Okay, I just need to comment before you say anything that if you hadn't told me ahead of time that those responses were coming from fucking Chat GPT, I would have thought it was a person.
Yeah. Oh,
Like this
yeah.
does it doesn't I remember when it started, like all this AI shit and it sounded robotic. And this doesn't
Nope.
sound fucking robotic at all.
Oh, yeah. And you can pick like different accents and stuff that you want to hear.
Nope.
It's crazy. But I mean, I ask ChatGPT about conspiracies all the time, and it usually always says like it's not proven or this is just a theory. But this, it's like, nope, it's a thing. This is what it is. And the fact that it's like sensors, it's like,
Right.
okay, if they're trying to figure out where all this stuff is and track it, that makes sense that there would be smart dust everywhere. I don't
Well,
know.
let me share something a little creepy with you because you mentioned earlier how Bethany Frankel was talking about um, our government learning to create fog like over 100
Mhm.
years ago. So, in that Daily Dot article, it cited research that was reported to be accurate by the Bay Area CBS News at some point in time, where the US military conducted experiments over cities like San Francisco, where they used artificial fog to spread bacteria over this 20-year time period from 1949 to 1969. And it was supposed to be like a simulation of germ warfare attacks, but apparently it made a lot of people sick and it even killed people. And this is all laid out in a book called Clouds of Secrecy by Leonard Cole, which came out in 1989. And this guy is the director of the Terror Medicine and Security Program at Rutgers Medical School. And he said, quote, nearly all of San Francisco received 500 particle minutes per liter. In other words, nearly every one of the 800,000 people in San Francisco exposed to the cloud at normal breathing rate, which is 10 liters per minute, inhaled 5,000 or more particles per minute during the hours they remained airborne, end quote. And this report and this guy's book, it's all based on government records, court testimony, and interviews. So while people may say it's like conspiracy theories and totally far-fetched to think that there's nefarious fog, it is entirely possible because it's been done before.
And just think that was done in the 40s to
Right.
60s.
Yeah.
Imagine now. Yeah. And
Mhm.
for people that are like, oh, the government wouldn't do that to its own people. Remember the
Mm.
syphilis studies where they were giving black men syphilis and like not telling them and then not like giving them anything to fix it just to see what would happen? Um, they've done all sorts of things. I mean, you can look up on CIA.gov all the things that are declassified now. I mean, who knows what's classified? But they've
Right.
done all sorts of experiments on people unknowingly, and people have died from it. So I don't trust them whatsoever. Um, and I did this morning, I came across another video of this guy who was giving like a presentation on smart dust. So I'm going to play that too.
Smart dust originated with DARPA back in the 90s. This powder-sized chip is something called the Mu chip from Hitachi. It's the smallest commercially available RFID system in the world. You can literally scatter this stuff like dust or embed it into a sheet of paper. It doesn't require a battery. Flecks of computing power settling on your skin, ingested, monitoring you inside and out.
The nanoparticles are designed to go under the radar of the immune system. And so they are undetected in the body.
We have computing everywhere. We have connectivity everywhere. We have infrastructure that can compute those with new capabilities like AI.
If you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible.
Transhumanism is a growing movement that aims to use technology to modify our bodies, sometimes in radical ways to make them stronger, faster, and better.
I was
Okay, so
going to
that's
say
creepy.
that sounds like transhumanism, which
Yeah.
we did a whole episode on that earlier this year.
Like World Economic Forum type stuff that we know they're working on. I mean, this is not a theory. Like there are billionaires that are heavily invested in this because they want to live forever. So it's not some crazy thing. Like they're actually studying this, and who knows what types of experiments they're doing on the population, you know? So that's crazy. Um, and then there's this whole other theory that I heard that I was gonna play for you in a video, but it looks like it got taken down once again. So I'll just summarize it. The guy was saying how the drones started November 18th, and that was right after Russia launched that intercontinental missile into Ukraine as like a show of force of, this advanced weaponry they have, right? Right after he said that's when we started seeing the drones over the US bases in the UK and then all over the United States. And so he said the most likely conclusion from all of this is that it's our government showing Putin that, like, oh, you think you have advanced weaponry? Like, look at the technology that we have and how vast we can implement it, like, over an entire country. Technology you can't even imagine. And he's like, that's the reason why we're only seeing it in the US or over US bases, so that none of our adversaries can shoot it down and get a hold of it and try to reverse engineer our technology. And to me, like this seems like a very logical theory. Like it's kind of similar to that theory that I had about maybe this is a show of force to Trump to rein him in, but it's just a show of force to Putin. Like, don't try anything because like we can put these drones out over your people like in an instant. So I don't know, but like the difference is Putin announced publicly that he'd be testing out that missile to make sure that everyone knew it wasn't nuclear, to make sure that no one was harmed. That's not happening with the drones. Like the US isn't telling us anything, but maybe that's to show Putin also like how this would cause so much fear and distraction to the people. Or maybe it's so we don't know what's going on, so we don't say that they're trying to instigate World War III. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know what to think at this point.
I think that's an interesting theory, but I don't know if I'm on board with that idea of it being a show of force to Putin. I can, however, get on board with the idea of it all being a distraction created by our own government. And it's going to sound like I'm going off track here, but I'm not. So just stick with me, because we've talked for 2 years about how we're fully complicit in starting this war with Ukraine. We have funded it the entire time to the tune of what is now over $175 billion. And I don't know if you saw this, but Biden just announced on Monday another $2.5 billion in security assistance to Ukraine that he wants to be sent, quote, as quickly as possible, end quote, obviously, to fuck over Trump. On the same day, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen announced that we sent a separate $3.4 billion to Ukraine for critical resources and budget assistance. So that's $5.9 billion to Ukraine this week. And I don't know if I said 3.4 million or billion, but 5.9 billion, almost 6 billion to Ukraine in the last 2 days. And I think most Americans are just fucking sick of it. We're counting down the days until Trump gets in office and puts a stop to all of this excessive spending, especially the spending that, like, it's not helping the struggling people in our own country. So all of this drone stuff started after the election, right? After the election. And so it would not remotely surprise me if the drones and the plasma and the fog and the bird flu and all of the other, quote, conspiracy theories that we've been talking about are all just intentional means of distracting us. Because what's happening in the background? We have Biden just trying to sell off the farm piece by piece under our noses. And we have talked about this repeatedly for the past few weeks. If you look at all the shady shit he's been doing behind the scenes, he, with the pardoning and commuting the sentences of violent criminals, selling off the border wall, giving lifetime appointments to liberal whack job judges. Now his administration is trying to get plea deals again for the 9/11 terrorists because yesterday a military appeals court judge refused to deny the sweetheart plea deal that the Biden admin granted to these fucks a few months ago. And so it looks like they won't be facing death because we know Biden suddenly is not in favor of the death penalty. He's also in the middle of trying to ban oil and gas drilling leases in Nevada for the next 20 years. And this is like hundreds of acres of area. And he's trying to do all this before Trump takes office. And now keep in mind, we still have no concrete answers. That's what we keep saying with all this drone stuff. Nothing from the Biden admin about the origin of the drones or the orbs or the UAPs or whatever the fuck is in the sky. And in fact, I looked because we have not heard a fucking peep from the White House about this issue for over 2 weeks. The last White House press statement that addressed the drones at all was December 17th, and it is now January 1st. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to be concerned. We still have no answers. And I'm talking about like from our levels of government, right? Yeah, there's local governments that are concerned, and it's the citizens and the residents that are being impacted by all this that are concerned. So, bringing me back to what I was originally saying, I think the most plausible theory with all of this is it's all a purposeful distraction. We are purposefully being given no answers, and we're having our attention drawn to like every shiny new toy that appears in the sky. And it's all being done on purpose to distract us from what this administration is trying to do behind the scenes before they're ousted from the White House.
Yeah, that's a good point. And again, like how is he doing this? How is it possible to implement something like banning drilling for 20 years your last few days in office? I mean, that's ridiculous. Like that should not be allowed, and I hope that there's a way that they can overturn that. 'Cause what the
I mean,
fuck?
all the stuff he's doing, it's like an angry, kid throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. But since this is a conspiracy episode, I do want to bring up something. And this came to me last night after I was looking at the fog videos. So, what if the fog and the drones and the UAPs and whatever else is out there aren't necessarily being used as a distraction or intimidation or to spread chemical weapons? What if they're all being used as a transport tool for the bird flu? Like a means to speed up the spread because I'm obsessed with this whole bird flu topic. But everyone's sick right now, and maybe we're sick with COVID or the seasonal flu or the common cold or whatever the fuck it is. But remember on Monday I mentioned that health experts are talking about the seasonal flu combining with the bird flu and the viruses swapping gene segments so that the bird flu can spread more rapidly and become even more infectious.
Yep.
So, like, maybe that's the whole point, is using, the drones and the fog and everything else to spread the bird flu more rapidly during actual normal flu season when people are always getting sick. And like, what better way to do that than with these aerial, whatever you want to call them, in the sky?
Well, after COVID, I don't know how anyone could not take that into consideration. I mean, absolutely they could do that. And it makes me think too how we're still funding the Wuhan lab
Right.
after COVID. Ukraine has that biological weapons facility. And it's like, I don't know, that absolutely could be what's going on. I mean, it's happening at the same time that everyone's getting this illness that is super weird and lasting a very long time and then going away and coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, like, I mean, you've been talking about the bird flu for months, maybe even a
Since
year or
April.
more.
Since April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely think that could be something that's happening. I don't put it past our government, and that's what's
I
so
mean,
sad.
we'll just throw it into the box of quote conspiracy theories because there are
Yeah.
so many of them now.
Yeah. Well, and that could be what the fog is. Like it could be, a way to distribute this
Mm-hmm.
and, do it all over the world.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah. Gosh. Well, what's really eerie about that is, I vividly remember COVID and this time of year looking on the news and thinking, man, I'm so glad that we don't have that here.
Right.
And then a few months later we were locked down.
Hmm.
So it's like history repeats itself, and I don't know. This is very concerning.
Yeah.
I don't like any of these theories. None of them are really good for us. So again, if the government would just be transparent and say what was going on, then maybe we wouldn't think that they're trying to do something evil and nefarious.
Right.
So
But the more
there's
likely thing
that.
is that they are.
Yeah. And I agree with that guy in Joe Rogan. Like, if Trump knows something, he needs to say something.
Yeah.
But maybe he's waiting to get in office. So I don't know. We'll keep everyone posted for sure. And if you want to follow along with Bethany Frankel, she's all over it on TikTok. So that'll give everyone something to ponder. Let us know on social media. You can message us what your theory is. Maybe there's a theory that we haven't heard yet. So, everyone, Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Friday.